that integration really can't happen when ego is in the way. And I think that that's what takes place is people become attached to an identity, and then they're like, well, I can't possibly be X, Y, and Z because I'm A, B, and C. Well, you can be A, B, and C and X, Y, and Z. Who says you can't be? It's our own constructs that put these limits in place.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Ching, and I have an incredible guest here today that dives into all things metaphysical, even greater, jumping from something that was more traditional in the way you thought process reality. And now she is sort of like entering levels of dimensions that you know, you can't make this stuff up. So I'm very excited to have Natalie from Divine Transmission here today. How are you today, my friend?
I'm well. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and have this conversation. It's
Oh,
powerful.
well, it is. It really is, and I'm very grateful when incredible beings like yourself are being brought into my path and being shared. Sharing everything, your insight, your abilities to be able to access these higher states of consciousness. And we end up in this collective where we're talking about these things.
Mhm.
And it's like, how did we get here? Oh, man, I mean, this is like a revolution. Like it's happening as we speak. It's cranking up second by second. It's getting greater and greater. So without any further ado, I would love you to share with my audience a little bit about you, your background, where you came from, how you became this incredible, insightful being that shares all these greater insights into all things dimensions.
I would feel honored. So, yeah, for me, I sort of just started out. I knew from the beginning of time, like when you sort of are a little kid and the teacher says to you, hey, you got to start thinking about what you want to be when you grow up. I had that, and I was sort of like, what do I want to be? And I would see this kid in my class, and he was dysregulated, he'd get angry, had a hair trigger, he would snap off at this tiniest of things. And one day I just said to the teacher, like, where does he go when he leaves his class? When he storms out and runs off, where does he go? And she said, oh, we have it set up that he sees a therapist. And I was like, there's a name for this? Like the light bulb came on because like in grade 3, you're really not that old, like 8, 9 maybe. And so I was already like, there's a name for what I want to do. And I remember feeling like so excited inside, that I could help bridge communication between the adult that was misunderstanding the child and the child's perspective of what was being asked of them. And so it was that piece, it was this mediation piece that I was yearning for. And so that's what I do at this point is the galactic mediating conflicts, mediating through past lives into conflicts that have happened throughout different timelines. But I didn't know as a 9-year-old that that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. I just knew I wanted to be a therapist. And so off I went to, college to do my certifications to be able to become a therapist. So I thought, let's do the intense stuff. Like I wanted the big stuff. I don't want like, okay, yeah, I have some anxiety and some ADHD. Like that's traumatic and that can be problematic and has to be managed. But I wanted these like, hi, I was in an earthquake and my mom and dad and this and that happened. Like I want the trauma stuff. And so we were looking at that. I was doing that. I did that for 10 years. And I was learning about people's nervous systems, that they have to be regulated and they, have to go through certain things in order to regulate them. And these are the practices. So I was doing that. And it felt okay. Like it was getting me by, but it didn't really have that oomph, the power to it where it deeply satisfied me, where I just like was thrilled about it. And so it wasn't until I experienced my own workplace trauma that took place where somebody one day just had a different of opinion with me, waited till the building was empty and then come running at me, got in my personal space. I was very pregnant at the time and it was super traumatic for me. And looking back at that now, you're like, why was that traumatic? Like, why did that cause me to have such a massive trauma response? Because really looking back at it, you're like, okay, so someone didn't like your opinion. Moving on. Like that's how I'd be now. But at that time, it was very traumatic. Like I went home, I couldn't stop crying. Granted, I was pregnant, but I couldn't get my feet on the ground again and get
Yeah.
regulated. So I went to therapy myself. And they did a practice called EMDR, which is, for those that don't know that practice, it's what is used to move the information from one side of the brain to the other side. And they do it kind of simultaneously, back and forth. And then it processes the information
So
to the
what?
experience and the feelings with the experience.
I'm sorry. So the definition is that like something to do with I response or EM?
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. I think I
Yeah.
remember briefly many years ago someone I came across who said I think she was the person who created. I was probably 20 years ago at that point.
Hmm.
EMDR, I think it is. You know, it's interesting
Yeah.
when you look at the space that you're in now, moving from therapy to what I call reality, because everything else is not
Hmm.
reality. It's a
Hmm.
construct of like human beings attempting to manipulate or distort the truth, which is where you're now in that space of realization in the high levels of consciousness that it's direct information. It doesn't get any more powerful. How limited the idea that, you know, I always remind people if you come from biology, neurology, psychology, you're very limited. And that, I think this is something that
Absolutely.
you're sort of like sharing with the audience right now. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is like I thought I was climbing up the mountain and then I got direct access and it was like that stuff was like just that wasn't even ground level
Molehills.
material.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah,
It
yeah, please go
wasn't.
on. So yeah, it's interesting how people use this neurology sort of stuff, hypnotherapy, you know, the idea of tapping into the nervous system as being a ground
Hmm.
level access point. But again,
Yeah, it was.
it wasn't giving you what you wanted, right?
Yeah, I was doing trauma therapy. We were there, like our supervisor. So here in Canada, uh, our government funds our healthcare, and mental health falls under our healthcare. So essentially, the government funded the therapy, and so a lot of times that created um, problems within the structures. It's a hierarchy. You do these things, you get paid. If you don't say these things, you don't get paid. Like, you have to meet the criteria or your funding stops, right? So then it becomes, you can see where that becomes challenging. And
Mhm.
so I had my own workplace trauma. I went to do the EMDR. I walked in there going, my mindset was, I don't have anxiety. I know I don't have anxiety. I know I have been functioning all up until now just fine. This thing happened at work and now I can't function. So let me go see what they say. So I went in there thinking, I'll get their opinion. I'll go home. I'll do the work myself. And maybe 2, 3 sessions, I'll be like good as new. Boy, was I completely wrong. I went in there and the therapist was amazing. You hold on to these buzzers, and one buzzes, and then the other one buzzes, and so they buzz back and forth, back and forth. And while they're doing that, the therapist directs you to just basically think of the traumatic experience, and it gives you a new mantra to say. And instead of feeling like, oh, wow, I was really powerless and helpless and I was really victimized, they give you this, I am empowering myself. I am now in power. I have an option. I have the choices. And they give you the new narrative to plug in. And as this thing is vibrating, you hold the image of the event that took place. So here's me standing here, and here's the person that comes in. And at first, the person that comes in is like 10 feet tall and I'm like 3 foot tall, right? And so that's how my mind creates this picture. And this person comes in and they get in my space. And so I'm holding this image. And as if the thing is buzzing back and forth, she starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller as I start to repeat the mantra of like,
Mm.
I am in control of this situation. I am in power. I am empowering myself. I am pulling light into this situation. Like, I had no idea at the time how 5 dimensional this was, because nobody talked about it. They just said it's really powerful therapy. Go do it. And as I'm basically going back in the timeline and addressing it, I could feel like somebody was pouring glitter on the top of my head. So no one's touching me, but I could feel it. And there would be these pings through my spine where it felt like things were letting loose. Almost you could equate it to the trampoline. If you think of the black tarp and all the springs that hold
Mhm.
the tarp in place, it felt like those springs were letting loose, and it would just ping, and then you would like feel that your back got looser, and you're like ping, ping again, and you're like, oh, and then the sprinkling like glitter on top of your brain. Meanwhile, no one's touching you. So it was really eye opening that we can go back in time and change the experience, even though it's already occurred. And now, I mean, when we do this fifth dimensional work, I mean, time is non-existent, and we know that, and we practice it. And it's a common experience day to day. But when you're just coming out of like this pigeonholed therapy piece into this fifth dimensional experience that you have no idea what is even called at that time, you start realizing my thoughts and feelings shape my body's experience. So my thoughts and feelings were negative, even though I had no idea how negative they were. And it created tension in my body that was so tight that when my thoughts and feelings changed, the tension immediately left my body. So it was like I left there thinking, I don't know what just happened. Like, how is that even possible? And you couldn't even explain it really to somebody that was doing therapy because unless you've had a 5D experience, it's really difficult to understand these concepts.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Are you familiar with NLP a lot at all?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean that would just be one of the processes that they sort of dusted off probably 30 or 40 years ago when they rustled NLP up, which really is nothing more than someone's insight into understanding the power of words, letters, numbers, symbols, all integrated deep within a DNA expression of yourself. And when you spatter that around, poof, here we have this realization that we can get access points to things. It's kind of like the crossover.
Hmm.
What I find really interesting about your story is how, and it comes down to like things like hypnosis, magic, illusions, channeling, psychic, mediumship. These are all like independently like categorized, yet so many people don't realize how integrated they all are in relation to sensory perception. And so,
Hmm.
I constantly pursue like illusionists, magicians, mentalists, and they never want anything to do with me. And it's like because it's like I want to understand where you're at your unconsciousness because you're doing certain things that are not just a sleight of hand illusion trick. So, have you ever heard of something called idiomotor response?
It sounds familiar, but
So in
yeah.
definition, what that would mean, you can get levels of, psychic kinesis, telekinesis, all that kind of stuff. But idiomotor is your expression of transmission through yourself at a very lower vibration that would be identified with holding a pendulum, tarot card reading,
Mm.
Ouija board, all that kind of stuff. That's that in the world of um, like magicians, hypnotists, illusionists, they use this ideomotor stuff. So this is how you get into levels of like mind reading. So you can
Mm.
easily read someone's mind and work out certain things. Now, within you and I, and how we talk about it, how I teach it from a Taoist priest perspective, using ancient practices of like actual thought projection, not as opposed to an idea of. But idiomotor response is a transmission of information, and they're reading it from you. So I use it a lot
Mm.
back in the day. I'll get you to go. All you got to do is you're sitting there. I'll go, okay, take an object, any object. And you'll be like, okay,
Mhm.
go in your house somewhere and put the object wherever it is. And you'll be like, okay, now
Mhm.
come back to the screen, sit down, and I'm going to use the vibration of your transmission to find where that is because you've already seen
Mhm.
it with your own eyes. So that transmission is there. So I can follow, I will tell you, okay, get up, go to the left, go to the
Mhm.
right, go forward, go back. You can feel the transmission. And all of a sudden,
Mhm.
you go right to that thing. Now, I've done this with someone taking a quarter, going in the middle of like the MGM Grand and going anywhere. anywhere in the MGM Grand in Las Vegas and drop it
Hmm.
off. And I found the quarter after they dropped it off
Yeah.
in a hotel room at the other end of the hotel that was like 5,000 miles away, because it's a transmission. And what I really get excited about when your story is sharing this, like, okay, I came from this understanding, I wanted to help people. I realized that all these incredible things are going on, and so I took it from an angle of, this is technically from academia. This is the way I'm supposed to approach helping someone with these tools as a therapist. Then you realize, okay,
Hmm.
EMDR is all of a sudden, hey, EMDR is like some type of access into sort of unconscious behavior that sounds so much more sexier than just I'm a therapist. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you're getting this actual kinesthetic response from something that you believe is non-tangible, and they're not actually physically. And that's where psychokinetic touch comes into it with illusionists, where I'll take, say, for yourself and myself, I will have a third person connect the three auras, and then I'll touch their nose. I'll ask you to close your eyes. I'll touch their nose, and you'll be like, where did you touch me? And you'll be able to point to your nose where I touched the other person. They're not even in the same room. But I mean, that's kind of like a
Hmm.
level of distance healing, right? It's
Hmm.
it's so
Absolutely.
exciting when we start to put all these things together, because people don't understand it. So
Mm-mm.
it's like this layered dimension. So magicians hate me, mentalists hate me. They don't want anything. I'm like, I've been pursuing quite a few of them in Vegas, but they're just not interested, because I understand how they use psychological
Hmm.
tricks and energetics, and it's very powerful. But they don't look at it like you and I. Like, you're accessing direct source information, high ascension consciousness from the source. And see, they would dismiss that, but then they'd use idiomotor response all day long to play their little psychic
Hmm.
tricks and whatever, and then go, I'm not a psychic, I'm not a mind reader, I'm just using, you know, psychological tricks. So they dismiss the
Hmm.
type of stuff that you and I go deeper into, way past what their base understanding of. And then all of a sudden it's like, why are we not crossing over? Why, you
Yeah.
now, I'm about to hear it. If I can shut up, I will hear what your story is and go to that point where you're at that next level, because it blows my mind. It blows my mind that people are not integrating the two worlds, because it really is the same. Anyway, I'm going to be quiet because I want to hear
Yeah.
more. Go ahead.
Oh, that's good. I think you're bang on, like that integration, and that integration really can't happen when ego is in the way. And I think that that's what takes place is people become attached to an identity, and then they're like, well, I can't possibly be X, Y, and Z because I'm A, B, and C. Well, you can be A, B, and C and X, Y, and Z. Who says you can't be? It's our own constructs that put these limits in place, and then our belief system has these pigeonholes that get stuck in this rigid at that point. It can't move. So yeah, for me, it ended up being that I get in, I do my EMDR, I'm there for 2 years, once a week, which is like not at all what I had expected. And each week, my body is getting better and better. It's relaxing more and more. I prior to this, they were looking at, well, maybe you have like an autoimmune disease, and maybe you have like chronic tightness through your body. Maybe you have like something. There was all kinds of mysteries around why is your body so tight and tense. But those things became resolved as we went through. Um, I guess it would be like, I guess, inner child healing, essentially what we would call it. And so I get there, I do that, and then I start realizing I really don't fit in this workplace anymore. Like you start awakening, like the lid starts to come off, right? And so you start realizing like the people that I was dealing with in this agency where I work, my workplace, I don't really align with them anymore. And this isn't really jiving. So I have my baby. I'm thinking still, I'm going to do here, we do 18 months of mat leave. So I'm going to do my 18 months of mat leave. And I think it was month number 3, I went to open my car door and it dawned on me, why am I going back to a workplace that I don't enjoy?
What is going on here? I'm trying to. Are we double? Can you hear this? There's
Yeah,
something
what is
going on
it?
in the I'm oh my goodness. Here we go. Let's go back to this. My apologies. I'm like, where is this
Okay.
coming from? But
I thought it was just on my end that my headphones were like doubling up or something.
you're hearing spirits. No, I'm just kidding. It's so funny because when you get to the illusionist trick, they have this device that they literally put um, either on their hand or somewhere on their hand, and when they touch someone's forehead, it transmits a sound through
Mm,
their hand into their forehead, and they go, "I want you to hear this sound in your voice. Put your fingers over your ears," and it's an actual device. And they put their finger on their head, and the sound penetrates their skull, and they hear a sound. And so
mm.
this is like another illusion. It's like so interesting how they cross it over. Personally, I know you and I could do this. I know you could do it without having to use a little technique. But
Yeah.
it's like there's this crossover that's mind blowing to me how these people do this stuff. But anyway, that was
Yeah,
we
that's
were hearing
crazy.
voices, Natalie.
We were hearing voices. We were hearing voices. Uh, yeah, they're gone now. It's all quiet. It's just us.
Go straight
Uh,
ahead. I apologize for that.
yeah. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so I ended up, did my inner child healing, sorry, and left my workplace. I went and started realizing, hey, I own my own light. I own my own tools. I started to realize what my value was and that it could not be connected to a dollar. Like it was so past a dollar amount that you could put on my value. And so I then just said, like, I own my own time, I own my own money. Like I am my own and I own my own light and it goes wherever I go. That's it. And then from that point it was like a non-negotiable. So even when I got my therapy practice up and running, people came to me and they said, like, can we do a contract you in? And I was like, no, that, like, I own, nobody will ever pay me for my opinion to say what they want me to say, by my opinion in a way that is, they own my voice. Like it's not something that's on the table for purchase. And so there was a big realization, because having worked for government dollars and government funding, you had to follow certain criteria, which made it difficult. So I did that. And then I started, once I was getting my business up and running, I was teaching other individuals, other entrepreneurs, how to get their businesses like up and elevated and, expanding. And one person just came in one day and was like, have you read the emotion code? Have you thought of like doing, combining your business model and your therapy stuff? And at the time I hadn't, because I was sort of like, why? Like I'm taking along, doing just fine. I'm feeling good. This is kind of meeting all my needs. And then I started, just for fun, I was like, let me just go look at this book and see what it is. And that was the, like, taking the top off and looking down the rabbit hole, and whoop, off I went. And I was picking up then just making sure we weren't echoing again. Yeah, I was then picking up the stuff like people's nervous systems, connecting my nervous system to their nervous system. And so even like yesterday, I had a client that was coming in. So I was in session and my next client was coming in. And before she was even in, I had this rib pain that felt like I couldn't sit up tall enough. Like I kept moving to the side, and I was like, what is this rib pain? So I do a quick check of, like, through my system. I'm like, this actually isn't my pain. This is my next client's pain. And I'm like, oh, so she comes in and I'm like, when did you start getting this rib pain? And she's like, oh, I have pain through my whole body. It's not just rib. And I'm like, but your rib is the problem right now. So we cleared that. We started going through things. But you were bang on when you're like, we can feel it. We know it. It's a vibration that comes from the individual. It's that signature and it transmits. When your energy is connected with their energy, you feel what they feel.
Yeah. It's really powerful stuff. I mean, we understand that from the level of consciousness that you and I are at, and the community that we're surrounded by, that helps people awaken their own true source information. But there's so many parts of the world that are very limited. Like, I work with hypnotists, I work with channelers, I work with psychics, I work with doctors, of medical doctors, I work with doctors of Chinese medicine, acupuncturists, chiropractors, functional medicine. I mean, the list just goes on, and none of them integrate any of this stuff
Yep.
collectively. Within a Taoist model, we are, in my opinion, and I am biased, there's no question, we're second to none when it comes to internal alchemy. That's what we
Mm-hmm.
do. That's our bag. That's our thing.
Yeah.
We've been doing it for tens of thousands of years, and that's the sort of stuff that people get really gravitated to
Mm.
for the pulpability. It's like
Yeah.
something repeatable, how you transmit, and you've created your own access to your own system, and it's really powerful stuff that you teach people how you're doing whatever you're doing. This is something that everyone should be able to access. Everyone should be able to get their real source
Mm.
information. And for you and I, we're like, okay, here I am, source,
Yeah.
give me the answers, and we're ready to receive it. There are many people that are limited by their mindset, their the way that they perceive their reality, the duality they operate in. They're not going to access that initially without a little bit of handheld,
Mm.
a little bit of realization, a little bit, which way do I have to go? What do I need? What's the purpose of me being here, and how am I going to get a grasp of it? What's your thoughts on that?
Hold on. The explanation is going to come out in light language. So it's just helping people's system integrate what you just said. It's basically that. It's, this, we kind of latch onto something that works, and then when we latch onto something that works, we stop exploring other opportunities because we have something that works. That's good. But the system that I use, I was asking my guys, like, what is that I use? What is it that I do that is it's really impactful? But I've never studied Reiki. I've never studied like QHHT, like all these different
Mhm.
models. I've never studied them. I have no idea um, about the I guess the theory on them, because I've never been guided to go do them and practice and become certified in them. To me, being something certified in something is a 3D matrix type model that
Yeah.
we say, okay, well, we believe you now that you're certified. And it's
Well, you
not
believe
that way.
yourself, right? You validate yourself. It's interesting because you make this really powerful insight. Is like, yeah, this piece of paper validates all things. I think
Mm-hmm.
when I was ordained as a priest, many decades ago, as a Taoist priest, it wasn't about a validation of a piece of paper. The ancient practices are integrated into a realization that millions of people have used for tens of thousands of years. And so you sit into this frequency. So you're sitting
Mm-hmm.
into a path that other people have walked on to enlighten your consciousness, and it's tangible. The most important thing for me is being able to replicate something, right? So, even though being a priest for 30 years in Taoism, in two sects of Taoism, that's not what validates my experience. When I get like, I have my teachers, as you have your teachers. I really find it really it's exciting when I hear you speaking the light language. I'm not familiar with it. Quite frankly, I've been channeling my teachers and channeling and exercising spirits, demons, entities for 30
Mm-hmm.
years, and I've never really come across aliens. And quite frankly, in the last probably 6 weeks, I've come across a couple of dozen of them, and that to me is interesting because it's never been something that's on the table. Like, I could go 10 years without doing an exorcism on somebody because they're not bringing that frequency into their own field, because their perception creates the construct, giving validity to these entities that then present themselves in their sensory perception, their field, their level of consciousness. So it's funny, just I don't know. There's a fire sale on aliens. I have no idea, but there's a lot of them right now. There's a huge amount, and hearing you speak in your language and how you're communicating with your guides, it's really, really, really powerful stuff. That is, it's kind of like the first time I experienced my relationship with Latsu over 30 years ago. I channeled once. I just sat down with my
Mm-hmm.
teacher, and he taught me how to channel, and
Mm-hmm.
I received Latsu that first time, and it's been, a match made in heaven ever since. Yet, you know, there was a level of progression that you get to. It's just like understanding how the mechanics work, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is true source information. When you channel information at that level, there's a tremendous amount of heat and density of energy that enters your physical body, and it's
Mm-hmm.
transmitted that way, and it's like an anchor. So how I would describe it as this, like literally like something pouring into you, like liquid metal into your physical body, and then it transmits out in light, information, energy, and it's very present. There's not a subtlety. It's quite dramatic from the person who's channeling, and the actual spirit or entity or energy that they're transmitting is on a whole nother level. You watch it. I watch you dip in and out of that. And there's a lot of things coming in and out of your field as I'm looking at you. It's like for a lot of people, they go, "Oh, wow, I need to call the Ghostbusters or something." No, not at all. I mean, this is just information that you're receiving, and it's sort of like oscillating and transmuting, and it comes in the form of different sort of entities or energies, and then it sort of ripples out into your auric field. And that's just another day in the office for me. It's kind of like everything is a vivid
Yeah.
sort of like, multi-dimensional computer screen, and wherever I put my attention, I access the information or see what it is that's there. And that's just, again, how you acquired your access point is exactly how it's very much within to a massive degree how I experienced my whole journey.
Mm-hmm.
Before I was involved with Taoism, I was an atheist who was a power lifter and bodybuilder who had nothing to
Okay.
do with anything. And so I was throwing around weight and squatting 800-pound squats, 800-pound deadlifts, and I went straight into completely leaving exercise, health and fitness, powerlifting, going straight into Taoism, and because Latsu brought me there, and it had nothing to
Mm-hmm.
do with. And so that realization, that tuning, when was that moment for you? When was that moment where
Mm.
your guides came and it wasn't like a figment of your imagination? We were like, oh,
Oh
they're
yeah.
not leaving right now. They've put in a stake and they're here for keeps. When was that moment for you?
Yes. Um, yeah. So what happened was I had my last baby. I have four boys, and my last little guy.
Congratulations.
Um, Thanks. Yeah,
I
he's
love
two
having it.
now.
Oh,
But
wow.
he is. It was during his arrival. So all of my kids, I had natural births, and my last one, I had an epidural. And so he was very stuck. There were a lot of complications, and I was like, I'm not in it for this. Like, you just hook me up to the good stuff, and like, let's get the show on the road. And so I had the epidural, and um, after he arrived, it was still like 3, 4 months after, and I had this pain that was in my shoulder. It came from my chest into my shoulder and through my back. And so, because I was aware of the emotion code, I was like, these the emotions from the birth? Is this? I was like clearing everything, and when you clear for your baby and their past lives. And so I'm clearing mine, clearing his, like, and finally, I'm like, it's not that, it's something else. And so I started just really to connect with myself and say, like, clear it. What is this? It's got to go. Like, it's getting worse every day. It's like this pressure, tightness. It feels like I can't turn my neck really all that great because it's so deep inside me. And I kept coming up that it's actually not mine. And I didn't know what it was. So I was having a bath one day, meditating, and I was like, show me what I need to do to clear it. Like, just, I've had it. I no more guessing, no more pissing around. Like, clear it. What do I have to do? And out of the peripheral side vision on my right side arrived a big, huge angel, a big golden angel. And I was like, hello? Like, and I'm trying to pretend like I don't see it. Like, I'm not loony. Do do do. I'm looking side to side. I'm like, you're still here. And he's like, yep. And I'm like, do 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 do, side to side looking, not looking at you. You're still there. Like, you're following my vision. And I'm like, what's going on? Hi. And he's like, yeah, I came to show you that the pain in your chest is because you have forgotten what true love is. And I'm like, oh, I have a husband. He loves me. I know what true love is. And he's like, okay, awesome. Come here. And I was like, okie dokie. This is awkward. I'm having a bath and there's a big angel here. Like, ah. And so he picks me up like a baby, like almost like you would scoop up your wife at a wedding type deal. He
Right,
scoops
right,
me up
right.
and pulls me into him, and he transmits pure love energy from himself to me. And it like came through my body, and it was like super overwhelming and tingly, and it made you cry because then you were like, yep, I definitely had forgotten what true love was. Definitely had forgotten. And he's like, now you remember what this feels like. And anytime you want to feel true love, you call me back and I'll come and I'll pick you up and I'll show you what it is. And I was like, okay, 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 like not panicking at all. Okay, this is great. So he tells me this. And then the third day he came in and he said, you have to bring that love into your heart. And I was like, okay, like, sure, whatever you say. Okay. So I bring it in. And he's like, I want to take you somewhere. I was like, okay, where are we going? And he's like, follow me. So I follow him, and he opens this golden doorway and tells us that we're going through this golden doorway. And I was like, stop, stop. Are you like, is this where people die and they go through the doorway? And he's like, no, 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 no. And I'm like, because like I want to live. And he's like, no, 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 like this is a doorway of life, but it's not where you're dying. This is actually an entrance, like similar to living, but not. So I'm like, okay, like whatever, at this point I'm just going to trust you. You're an angel, so I think you deserve some trust, right? So I follow him in through the doorway of life, is what he calls it. And as soon as we get on the other side of this doorway of life, it's essentially a portal. At the time I didn't have a clue what it was, but looked like a golden door. We go through the portal, we arrive, and it's all like smog, fog type, misty air type thing. It's equivalent, I guess, to clouds is what it would feel like, but it's smoggy, misty. And I'm looking at the angel, and I'm standing there, and it looks like, as far as we can see, either side, we're standing in an aisle, on a pathway, and as far as you can see on either side, it lines this kind of aisle pathway are angels. And I'm like beside myself. I look at the angel, and I think I'm just talking telepathically to him. I'm like, what is this? And he's like, this is the entrance of life. I'm like, so are all these angels guarding my life? Or like, how does this work? And he's like, these are your angels. And I'm like, they are my angels because they're going to help me. And he's like, yeah, they're delegated to you. And I'm like, for what? Like, is my life needing to be guarded? And he is like, no, like, you're going to be working with the angels. And I'm like, when did I sign up for this? And he's like, well, that's why I'm here. And I'm like, oh crap, like what's that? Like, you have no idea what's going on. So I'm like, so what is actually going on right now? And he's like, look, I've been sent to ask you if you're going to work on the 3D side or if you'd like to come on the 5D side and work. And I was like, well, what are the requirements? And he's like, well, if you were to decide to come and work on the 5D side, you're going to be a worker either way. But he's like, I'm here to remind you of your work and to ask you if you want to come with me to work on that 5D or stay. And I was like, I have too many kids. I cannot go anywhere. Like, one's super tiny. And if I exit and leave my husband with 4 kids to raise, it's not going to go well. Like, I need to stay and be a mom. And he's like, okay, then that's your wish and that's what you'll do. And I'm like, and I don't know how to work with angels. So I like, look at all these angels. I can't even speak to them. He's like, sure you can. Open your mouth. And I'm like, ah. And out came this magical angel music. Like, I don't sing. And out of my mouth came like this crazy, reverberating angelic music. And he's like, see? And when I did that, all these angels turned and looked at me. And I was like, oh my freaking God, what is going on? They heard me. He's like, yeah, you spoke to them. And they like lowered their head and were humble of service. And I was like, what is happening? I had no idea who I was at that time. And so he is like, I'm like, so, uh, like, what happens next? He's like, well, now your training starts. And I'm like, okay, training? He's like, yeah, you're going to stay on the 3D side, right? And I'm like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, out of curiosity, what would have happened if I said I was going to go to the 5D side? Like, what happens at that point if I was to go? And he's like, well, you would get in your car, you would be driving your car, only you would get to a stop sign. And instead of going right through, you would have been broadsided and you would have gone to the hospital. You would have been induced into a coma. I would have come to you at that point and I would have asked you, are you staying or leaving? And you would have an opportunity at that point to make a decision. I'm like, oh, I sure am glad I had this chest pain and I could see you. Like, I really don't think any of my family need to go through like mom almost dying. And he's like, "Yeah, well, that's, that's why we come and we have these opportunities to have these conversations. And yeah, so that's not going to happen anymore. Sure enough, the next day, the place where I was supposed to be going to, I do in-home visits for the therapy side or go in and I visit families in their homes. The mom called me and canceled and said, something's come up at school. I'm not able to get to the appointment. I'm not going to be home in time. So I'm not going to be able to could keep basically the appointment that we had. So she canceled it. And I looked up to my right and he's smiling at me. He's like, see, I told you, if you choose to stay on the 3D side, I will hold up our promise. You don't have to come in to have the near death experience. And I was like, thank goodness.
This is
So that was my
absolutely
start.
refreshing, my friend. I love healing. I love hearing the stories of people's entry into their new awareness of reality and
Mm,
their awakening, their unawake, because there's just
yeah,
infinite amount of entry points and the stories are endless and they're just so inspiring and exciting when you see how other people are entering this high level of consciousness. And it's
yeah.
like that relationship is like you could have gone and sat on WebMD and went, I'm getting tightness, shoulder pains. I think I'm dying. I might be having a stroke. And this is generally how I sort of like help people understand that in most cases, they're attributing some physicality to something that is bound by a 3D reality, as opposed to understanding that this is absolutely nothing. It's nothing even close to what they would perceive as something as limited as that 3D course. It has nothing to
Mm-hmm.
do with it. It's just
Mm-mm.
an awakening and a realization. And when you get that tingling and that incredible sensation, that's most people think they've got diabetes, but it's I
Yeah,
mean,
for sure.
and it's all programming. It's how you see your reality. So now you've been given your directive, and now you're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I all of a sudden got hired without being hired. I didn't even really go through an interview. So now I have this new job. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
um, so what happened from there? I mean, how long have you guys how long have you been working with this? And what's the name of the angel? Do you share with that
Yeah,
information? Or
yeah. So that was Archangel Shamuel,
okay,
and I'm his divine twin ray. And so in that incarnation, I would have been Charity, and it was coming back to remind me of what love was, and to ask me to come and work with him because we were that twin ray player, right? So I did my whole little tour. There was lots of things that I had to do. I call it missions. So I become assigned a mission, and that particular mission was to help within the Egyptian timelines because there was a lot of opposing pressures and things that were overstepping. Some of those universal laws were being overstepped, and so I had to kind of go in and help assist. It was basically counseling, but yeah,
so I've got an interesting question for you because
sure.
again, you know, I have a moment where I'll sit around and I'm always hanging out with my teachers. I have access to them at will, but I
Mhm.
get these, you know, depends on where I'm at, but I have people knocking on my door going, "Hey, you listening? I heard I could see you're open for business. What do can I share?" And so,
Mhm.
lately it's been kind of weird. A couple of months ago, I had Bruce Lee come in and I'm hanging out with him and he gave me his whole deeper understanding of how he exited his very short life in this lifetime and what
Mm.
happened, the fundamentals of that. And so that was a real interesting one. Recently, I just had Dolores Cannon hopping on there.
Mm.
Now that's an interesting one because you have this whole um, sort of like um, movement of the stuff that she does,
Mhm.
where they're trained in a certain process that she has, and
Mhm.
that people swear that know her because I've getting irritated with the noise in my ear from this a really nice person. I'm not going to say she's not. She is a very nice person. The question is one, I'm sort of confused why she's an earthbound spirit because she should have crossed over with all her understanding of high levels of consciousness, which is kind of interesting. And two, they claim that within her circle or information that she's not going to come back and start harassing people and talking to them. Well, I got news for you. She has. And she's got some type of like agenda or message of something that is more um, not so happy with the process of how people are transmitting her material. That's an interesting one. I like that.
Yes. Yes. So I
Is
also had similar message, about the same thing. Yeah, exactly. That's
this
exactly
is
it, and they
beautiful,
had me connect with the person. So they
right?
had me connect then with an individual who does the QHHT and experience what it's like to go through that process. They're like, you have to understand it. Go take yourself and do a couple sessions with a couple different practitioners to get an idea of what that feels like. So I'm like, okay. And they're like, now you understand what your method is and why it's different. And I was like, okay. But before that, Dolores Cannon came in to me and she was like, we when I created or when I was given this method to distribute, it was X amount of years ago. And she's like, so now with the raise of our conscious levels and what we can connect to and what we have access to, we are so surpassing that creation, that content, that stuff is it has its place, it has its purpose, but we have other tools like we can just up level and connect and to do it to get that stuff. And she's like, so that's at this point it feels like there's that the people that are still practicing that model are loyal to her legacy and her content, and she's like they can drop that and embody and learn the higher level stuff that's coming in because we have access to this higher level stuff. Why aren't they taking it on?
Now
um,
that's really interesting because the message she gave me was they're not implementing the same processes that she initially engaged in, and so I'm like, so what does that mean? And she said there's 3 steps to the 5 steps. And they're not doing the other 2 5 step. The two
mhm,
processes are 5 steps, and so I was like, okay, what do you want me to do about it? I mean, you're that doesn't make any sense. And so the deeper understanding, I then looked into it a little bit further, and they're even confessing this. This is the interesting part. So it kind of like parallels what you're saying, and then it sort of validates what she's saying. That
mhm.
anyone that goes through that process right now doesn't go into the same deep state of trance. They don't
That's
do
right,
it.
I was not.
They don't. They don't. But she's claiming it's because they're not doing it the way she taught them to do it. They're doing it in a variable way that works for them because they're all more insightful and they're going to go to a higher level and all this kind of stuff. So I find that interesting. You got a different facet of her consciousness, and so did I.
Mhm,
I kind of got a similar one, but different. She's not as
mhm,
happy with the outcome, and she wants people to actually follow the true source nature of how she perfected her state. I mean, because are you
mm,
familiar with hypnosis at all, or
mhm,
kind? Yeah, so somnambulistic is a state that um, I like to play with every now and then. Like if I'm bored, I'll go down the street in Las Vegas and erase people's names, make them disappear, their reality, take their keys and wallet, wake them up, and they go, "Oh, what? Well, are we starting yet?" I'm like, and all their friends are watching, and they're like, "Are we starting yet?" And like, and I've got their wallet and keys in my hand, and I'm like, "Are you missing something?" And they're like, yeah, where's my wallet and my keys? And I'm like, where are they?
Peace.
That's just a state of consciousness. That's all it is. And so when you
Mhm.
get into that somnambulistic state, this instant transfer, and this is a part where that's what she was known for in her programming, is how to get
Mhm.
so deep. You shift a whole. You can do anything with that. It's kind of like equivalent to an epsilon state of frequency. So it's below delta. It is
Mhm.
so deep that you are. It's like the dramatic realm from epsilon to gamma. And so
Mhm.
normally when I measure my gamma frequency, if I'm transmitting Latsu, I've gone up to 120 to 200 hertz when it comes to gamma brainwaves. And it's like
Okay.
I've got EEGs showing me that I'm like, this is why I feel like I'm in a sauna at 250 degrees. And
Mm.
you see that,
Mhm.
you go, whoa, there's no denying that. But that's complete envelopment of brain, of the whole brain, making you 100% conscious, making you have change instantaneously, accessing anything at all the time. So I love
Mhm.
that. You're getting a message from her. I'm getting a message from her. Similar, a little different, but
Mhm.
similar. And I wouldn't have validated it because I didn't know anything about her stuff until I went and looked at it. And it's like,
Mhm.
and these people are saying, yeah, it's just part of, I think people are getting more conscious and they're not going into a deeper state of trance. No, that's just not true because
Right.
I could take you into some embolistic state for entertainment purposes or healing purposes. It really doesn't matter. So the question that I ask people is, they're feeling sort of like they want to express another way or access point. That's fine. Don't use her
Mhm.
method. That's how I see it. I'm
That's
like,
right. Don't
don't,
call it that.
yeah,
Mhm.
don't call it that. Do whatever you want to do. But like the thing that's upsetting her is it's not being translated that way. You're not getting the same depth of trance. And it's like, you're doing things that most people work, you've been doing this for, I think, from your own admission, a couple of years now with your guardians and
Mhm.
guides and angels. When you get
Mhm.
into that shift, that state of consciousness, most people, they got to warm up to it. They got to,
Mm.
there's a process. It's like, get the elevator music, the lotus position, a couple
Mm.
of cents, but there's this repeatability that comes with the mastery that we're talking of that you are accessing, that once you continue to carve that groove out, it becomes instantaneous. So
That's
when
right.
when people talk about astral projection, and this is something that I love to teach people, they've got this Hollywood movie version where you got to die to be alive, and it's sort of like I got to go out, and when people go, oh, I want to go out of my body, I always remind them, you're actually going inside, and they're like,
Mhm.
whoa. Whoa, bro, that's deep. I didn't even know what that means. I'm like, well, you're at that state where this is a realization, to see what you're doing at ease of, effortless, which is within Taoism, we call it Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort.
Mm.
That's the flow that you have. That's your flow, and I'm witnessing it. And I need my audience to understand the level of mastery that you access when you're doing what you're doing, when you're getting that information, where you're accessing true source. There's so many things going in and out of your auric field right now, information, energy, rippling, oscillating things. And,
Mhm.
that's, everyone has it, but it's just like, how deep is your sensory perception to perceive it and to witness what's
Mhm.
going on? That's a mastery, my friend, and I'm very grateful to witness it, and just the story of how you're accessing it. And then furthermore, this whole diversion and how you got that. Oh, here's another one. So you did Egyptian. Let's ask for the Egyptian part.
Mhm.
So now I've
Yeah.
got this other character. You may have heard of this guy. Have you ever heard of Thoth?
I knew you were gonna ask about him.
Oh, dude, he I don't know. I need
Uh,
your opinion on this, because that energy, I'm not so sure I'm a fan.
that's
You
right. Yeah,
know,
that's right.
so when he came in to speak with me, and I put a transmission of it, because normally I do just a mediumship where it's as
Mhm.
if we have a conversation with
Mhm.
spirit entities. It's normally like you and I have a conversation with a spirit entity, but you're not transmitting it into you. You know what I'm saying?
That's
It's like
right.
we're across
Hmm.
the table. It's like, yeah, oh, it's an interview. What's
Yeah.
going on? Let's have a conversation.
Yes.
Let's sit down and, but your guides and your guardians, your angels, you may
They're up
transmit
higher.
through you, and it's a different deal. So I transmitted this guy, and right, so, and I asked my teachers first,
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, let me transmit it. And I'm like, I put this out, and I had like half a dozen people within this emerald tablet, halls of
Hmm.
Mente, like world of like reality, going, you got to take that down. And I'm like,
Yeah, oh, yeah. The epiphytai.
because what happened was this guy came through, and it was this, and you can tell me what your thoughts are. He basically said, if you access the emerald tablets, I will access your body, mind, and spirit and hypnotize you and control your behavior. And as part of a collective. And I'm like, I don't, I'm not, I don't know what to make of that, because once I finished that transmission, I came out of that going, I don't know whether I'm a fan of this guy or not. This, and I didn't know that he was the OG godfather of hypnosis too. So this guy
Yeah.
goes deep back in the day. Now he has these three to 18 gold discs about this thick, and they're about this big, and they have 18 like images on the disc. They're made out of solid gold. They're transmitting around him at all times. And whenever someone accesses the emerald tablets, they are dispersed and then equalize, and they drop deep into someone's unconscious. And I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. This is kind of freaking me out. And people were like, what do you make of this guy? I don't know. And so
Mm.
you work with him because people go, he's Jesus Christ, he's a parallel, he's
Mhm.
God, he's all these other things. What is your relationship with Thoth? And then tell me more about what you perceive of this. But everything he said, the emerald tablets are not something that you want to play with. You will be hypnotized, and
Mhm.
you will be part of the collective. This is what he's saying. So you'll be part of the collective. This is a much higher frequency. He's part of the nasty stagnation that's going on right now in this new year, that's come to a precipice where his transmission is to consume everyone and feed from their energy. Every time that you
Mm.
access this thing, they're going to feed, you're going to feed. And I'm like, this sounds ominous. And his words were exactly, that's right, you should be afraid of me. I'm like, oh, okie dokie, this is very interesting. I want to hear what you have to say about this stuff, because I got really, I don't get scared. I'm a fearless
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
guy, but like, I was
yeah.
like, I don't, this guy.
Not the right flavor, right?
Well, I
Mhm.
don't know. You tell me what it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So awakening, the reason they came to get me and like say knock knock, you're being called to duty kind of deal was because kind of like that stuff was happening in Egypt. So there was a lot of mimicking and mirroring and
Hmm.
pretending, like shape shifting of entities and
Oh,
different
I think
goddesses.
shape shifting.
Um,
I mean,
yeah,
that's like one of the transformational skills that we have. Shape shifting is awesome, but I want to hear more about what you're talking about. Shape shifting. That's not what I'm
yes,
talking.
yeah. So these guys were, so if you think of the Egyptian goddesses, the Greek goddesses are very similar,
Mhm.
but the Egyptian goddesses, are, think of like a 2-year old, um, when they want something and they don't get that something, they have these like 2-year old temper tantrums. Now imagine if your 2-year old temper tantrums had the ability to change you into a rock or to make sure you never had water again in your life. Like they had these gifts.
Mhm.
So that's what it was like for the Egyptian gods when you drop in and have to kind of mediate conflicts in that situation. They you're I was called in because I don't know, Aphrodite was pissed off with somebody and then Hera was mad. So these are the Greek ones, but this is the same thing happened in the Egyptian timeline. So they're all supposed to be working together and live harmoniously. And I think people think of them as gods so that they think that that's what's happening, is that they're all nice and regulated, and they're not human like because they're gods. No, they're very emotional. At least the ones I dealt with in Egypt are. and they have a lot of like impersonating each other. And so you weren't really quite sure, is this the real version of you, or is this so and so pretending to be you because they're mad at you because you made this and that happen? Like you had to kind of follow, it's like a soap opera. Like you had to follow who was doing what with who, and then why they would think this, and then now why they're this way in front of you. So I would had direct like those conversations, those table conversations with the different goddesses and gods that were there. So Ra, he seems like he's a legit, good, quiet, humble dude. Fine, there was no issues with that guy. So there's certain ones where you're like, this guy just is clean and above board and is good, good. Then there's the other ones that kind of come in and you're like, I'm not quite sure about you. So Toth is one of those ones where he comes in and he sort of is like, the impression I got was he is captain of the football team. So this would be like his Earth, like now equivalent would be Mr. Stud. He is like on all the teams. He's a jock guy. He's able to like, he's very athletic, and he kind of comes in because he's, to him, king of everything, because he's, on this team and that team and the other team. And he's captain of those teams. So he comes in and everybody's kind of backing him because they want to be liked by this guy. He's, the captain of every team. And what I was showing was he channeled in the information for the tablets, and he still had this ego issue where everybody loves him, and he had this inflated ego thing happening. So instead, like you and I, we have these clear channels, and it just flows. Energy just flows, and we
Mhm.
can channel it out. And then there's other times where you're like, you're on a break today. Like you're not channeling anything today. You're just having a down day. You're just gonna go and do some Zen stuff and just get back to your center. And you're like, okay, I'm not gonna channel today because I'm having one of those down days where I'm just embodying and integrating and upgrading. He didn't do that. He was like, I don't need to do that. I am king. Everybody loves me. And I don't need to have integration time and downtime. I'm just going to keep channeling. So, now when people start to awaken, they're like, is that me saying that? Or is that actually being channeled? I can't tell the difference. That was what he became like. He was like, I have days where I have clear channel and I am channeling. There's days where I should not be channeling, but because I have to finish these tablets and everybody's counting on me, I am going to continue to listen to that, even though I can't tell if that's me talking or if that's actually channeled information coming in.
That is so profound because one of the things that he made very clear was the frequency so low in the emerald tablets, you'll believe these thoughts are yours.
Yeah,
And
because they
so,
don't hold it.
and so there's a person that will remain nameless, and you can jump to your own conclusions, that pushes a lot of emerald tablet stuff, very big on selling the emerald
Mm-hmm.
tablets. And he is actually a reincarnation of a rival of Thoth's. Yet
Mm,
he's peddling the Thoth narrative, but he doesn't realize that Thoth also knows that he attempted to
corrupt
overthrow
them.
him years ago, thousands of years ago. So he doesn't realize he's a reincarnation. Then I come across this guy that was having Thoth as a teacher, and then Thoth goes, I need you to be very clear. I am not Hermes. There's a
Mm-hmm.
very distinct difference in this transmuted energy. I don't want people to get twisted. This is a very big difference. Don't make the mistake of going, oh, I'm just a transmutation around the world that was everywhere. It was identified in different cultures and everything else. I'm not Hermes. And then, of course, Hermes came out of this guy, and instantly he was a reincarnation of Hermes, and he blew
Mm-hmm.
up. He was like freaking out, going, man, I don't know how deep this is, but I'm feeling so overwhelmed with energy right now. I've got to process this. And I'm like, I watched it come up out of his field, and he
Mm-hmm.
registered and felt everything that was going on. And it was like this double thing where Thoth is telling me, I'm not Hermes. Make sure there's a very big separation between the two. And then Hermes comes up out of nowhere. And I'm like, okay, this is becoming very problematic at this point, because you have these energies and they're all sort of overwhelming, consuming each other. Thoth is mentoring this guy, but then you realize this guy is Hermes, a reincarnation of
Yeah.
him. And I'm like,
Yeah, there's a lot of impersonating and switching and flipping. Like
it,
they
there's kind of
embody each other, so it was
yeah,
weird.
yeah, like I'd find that interesting. Like teaching channeling over the years for 30 years, it's like people tend to they create what they call um, this cult of personality. And
Hmm.
so you transmit like because one of my specialties is exorcisms. One of the original founders of one of the monasteries that I'm ordained at, it's about 2,000 years old. He was a very powerful exorcist. So then he used Lao-Tzu as his teacher to transcribe everything that is the monastery today that's still in China right now. I have my name carved into a monastery wall that's 2,000 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's still operating. But the fundamentals of that stuff and understanding Lao-Tzu, but then when you teach people this stuff, normally I get classes. I always use this story because it's a classic one because I had my mother present at this particular channeling class, right? So she's like,
Oh,
"Oh,
fun.
let me check it out. Whoa, I can't wait." And so we're in the class, and one of my students was obsessed with being the all-powerful exorcist. I'm a
Hmm.
badass. I'm like, okay, I'll give you the tools, but understand there's two things that go on here. You're either fearless or you're fearful. There's no in
Hmm.
between.
Yeah.
If you're fearful, then you operate in a duality, and moreover, you're going to be susceptible to very, very much variations of perception of your reality, and you're going to bring in different frequencies that will transmute into whatever it is. It's like there are an infinite amount of energies, frequencies, and vibration, spirits, whatever you want to call it. There are infinite. So be aware that the construct of your simulation is you and what you believe in,
Hmm.
where you're getting this information from. So she would bring in every week 100, 200 entities
Oh
into the
my.
class. And so one time specifically, she's sitting there and we're doing the class, and she's the vessel, the channel. And I have one student asking her the questions. Like, I've got questions. Let me ask. When the spirit is present, ask the questions. And so she starts
Hmm.
asking it, and I'm watching her field start to morph and change. I could see other energies inside her aura, and I'm like, that's not exactly what you're perceiving right now. So I said, look, sit back, let me ask the questions. And then it goes from low tone to ominous tone to this woman rises up, spins around a couple of times, gets thrown across the room. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, this is another day in the office of turbulent energies. But then there was an extraction. Of course, that's part of the exorcism, extracting the energy from there, extracting the spirit from there. And I've never come across a low vibrational entity that doesn't dissolve in seconds. How do you do that?
Hmm.
It's like, have you ever heard I always, it happens so quick. Only once have I ever had an exorcism where it lasts me like 3 hours. Most of it's like seconds.
Hmm.
But the fastest way to get there is I always remind people, it's like, do you need a hug? And that entity is really looking at a deficiency that is not making this person whole as a singular, and that's working on their 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 lower frequency, their perception. And the second they become whole and they are an expression of consciousness, the entity goes, I'm done. Thanks very much. Have a nice day.
Hmm.
It's like, and love is a great transmission of it. But again, love is very subjective still. Until you start hitting that high frequency, love can be in a category of razor blades and bunny rabbits, or it could be rainbows and unicorns. It depends on the individual. Whereas um, accepting and gratitude turns into a category that could be far more recognized as a state of
Hmm.
consciousness. Like if you're grateful, I can give you a compliment. You're very grateful. If I ask you how you're feeling, you're very grateful. If I give you $5, you're very grateful. It's easier to access that transmission as opposed to what is your definition of love? And so when you start doing whatever it is that you do within the realm of divine transmission, you give the people what they need to be whole, and then their expression of love is that universal consciousness that can is undeniable, and it's tangible, it's palpable, it's all things. But this
Mhm.
the Thoth thing, you know, he's everything that you expressed and more. I mean,
Mhm.
I I don't know where honestly how people just keep peddling the idea that this guy is like Jesus and all the rest of that. There's a lot of deficiency in that frequency energy and ultimately
Yeah.
the spirit itself. And I mean, yeah,
I
he all the things that you described. And like
think
he's operating, it's like he's a 2-year-old and you just gave him a handgun type of thing. You know what I mean?
yeah. He is when I called him, so part of my role is to mediate the conflicts. So he
Right.
was creating conflicts within the space that I was pulled into. And so I always call all parties that are creating and involved. And I say, like, okay, tell me, because it's seek to understand with unconditional love. I am non judgmental. I just want to know what happened. So let's just put all our cards on the table and then we'll see where the misunderstanding lies. And we have clarity. We just know. So that's kind of my approach when I do this. And he comes in and he's got that feel about like the jock football player that comes in and he's macho and he's arrogant and he's like controlling and he's, yeah, and so kind of attitude. And that's not how we mediate conflicts. And so when I was asking for a higher self version of him, there wasn't one, which clued me in that something else was wrong here. And so then I was like, you actually can't stay. I think he's the first person I ever banished out of my space was because he couldn't. Um, he wasn't in a place where he could shift. He
Yeah.
was
Well, I
sort of
mean,
like, I'm not willing to. I don't want to. I'm not willing to.
he's literally the highest expression of the lowest vibration.
Yeah, there you go.
He's literally the highest expression of the lowest vibration. And he's very deviant because
Hmm.
he knows how to manipulate people. And that's part of this whole
Yeah.
hypnosis thing and this deeper level of like Pied Pipering people with this information, this emerald tablet stuff. And he didn't pull any punches. He goes, I'm looking for world domination. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to control the masses. I'm like, that doesn't sound so holy to me, my friend. Well, you should be afraid of me. I use your fear as an entry point. That's how I control you.
Mhm.
If you are fearful of me, I have access to all levels of your conscious and unconscious process, mind, body, and spirit. You're mine. And I'm like, that sounds horrible. That is absolutely not. But you
Not for
have,
me.
and when you go looking for the energy across social media, he's a representation of God. He's Jesus. He's this. He's that. I
Yeah.
want to have greater insight. And whenever someone writes this information about him, I haven't come across anyone that's directly channeled that energy to validate it. They read it out of
Mhm.
a book or they got it from something. It's like, channel it for me and show me because I'm a show me guy. It's like, I'll show
Mhm.
you. You want to see a healing? I'll show you. You want to see physical flesh wiggle and restore itself back to its default frequency? I'll show it before your very eyes in this 3D reality. That's how fast you can access this transmission. That's how it works. So
Mhm.
I want to see it. These people are going, he's this, is that, and I find it very refreshing that you're sharing a very similar experience with that
Mhm.
energy because that's not how it's peddled. It's like, oh, this is
Yeah.
fantastic. This is amazing. This guy is like equivalent to God, and he's such a great thing. And this is really the foundation of all things, the Emerald Tablets. I'm sorry, but once you get out of this dimension, this 3D
Mhm.
dimension, I have yet to experience the limited stuff. I've gone to about 30, probably 36 dimensions outside of this one and traveled extensively in. And what
Mhm.
my perception is, how it's transmitted to me is there's like a lining that takes place within the universe. Once I hit that threshold, it transmutes me into a space that's complete phosphorus white light that seems to go on
Mhm.
forever. And I'm traveling in that light, and then there's a separation from that light to complete darkness. And what happens
Mhm.
is at that entry point between the black and the white. It's what we call within Taoism, it's called the Wu Ji, which is the stillness. And so that would be
Okay.
reflected of what people call a torus field. And so we access what we call, and this has been going on for thousands of years, black hole energy within what you would consider the fourth chakra, the fourth energy center, the heart. We call it the Dantian. We call it a fifth energy center. What happens is there's an expression of a death of a star, the rising of the red phoenix, which is the keeper of your heart energy, and then it expresses itself and opens the black hole, which is abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And in
Mm.
definition, that's the 0 point, which people refer to within quantum physics as the glue that keeps everything together. And that realization, just like you and I just had, the charge and chill that you just got right now, that is like,
Mhm.
we're on the same team. Yeah, we are. We're getting all this stuff coming in. But it's like, that's that point. So when you hit that Wu Ji point between black and white, you can go off into infinite possibilities. And so you
Mhm.
float through it. This is my experience. So you float through it and you get into infinite possibilities. When there's a lot of construct that people are mirroring right now, they go, well, this is the nature of reality. I'm like, what I would say to that is that's your nature of reality.
Mhm.
And it's completely cool. I love it. But when people go, no, this is it. Like, whatever you saw was not right. But don't worry. What I saw was right. I'm like, now we know that we're getting low vibrational stuff that is very, very questionable. What are your thoughts on that?
I have experienced that. And it sucks when you're around that because you're sort of like, okay, hold on a second. Are you just telling me what I think? Because I'm pretty sure I know what I think. I don't need you to tell me. I left that word a long time ago where people told me what to think and paid me to say what they wanted me to say. Like that was done. So when I am around that, I can feel that energy of their ego. Like something about me triggers something in them. So it's like, I don't
It's a
know if it's
frequency.
like,
It's what I call it's called this phenomenon in my world. I've coined it hillbilly hand fishing. And you're like, that
okay.
sounds so weird. It's like you got a bucket of emotions and you come in with a frequency that's so high. All, and I'm just going to use it, all their shit just comes to the top and you just can reach in and grab any emotion you want. It's just up there. And it's like, it's up to you to perceive your reality, realizing that everything has risen to the top. You can either attach it to a place, person, or thing, or heal from it and
Mhm.
let it just open your consciousness to another dimension. And so your frequency is getting that response. I'm very familiar with it. It
Mhm.
happens to me often. It's like either someone loves you or hates you. It's not one or the other. It's like because the frequency gets so high and then they believe it's about them. And so all of a sudden
Mhm.
they're like, "Oh no, wow, this person's really upsetting me." And it's like I've got nothing to do with it. All
Mhm.
I'm doing is bringing the frequency, my friend, and you're just either going to expand your consciousness or you're going to contract your consciousness
Mhm.
and have limited to none. That's what I've coined as the hillbilly hand fishing experience. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's very accurate. And you can definitely feel that you just step into the room and you know, like, who's done their work and who hasn't. And it doesn't, like, to us, it doesn't matter
Yeah,
if people have done their
no,
work. Like, where we are in your
yeah,
journey, that's
we're
cool. Just don't bring it over here and try to parade it around right here. Like, go step back a few steps, go over there. You don't need to be intimidated by the light for the frequency, the essence, or whatever you're feeling. It was, yes, I mean, I can understand that we highlight or bring to the surface some of those things for people, but it's their choice as to whether they see them for what they are or they point the finger at you and say it, try to compensate in some way and um, act really strange. Sometimes they act very peculiar, and you're like, why are those people doing that? And then you have to kind of like sit back and you're like, oh, the lessons that like I say Gaia or like spirit is coming in and she's saying like, hey, I'm going to place you with some individuals today and you're going to have an experience and you're going to hold light basically so that we can sort of assist them in a few more lessons that are needed on their pathway. No Spirit doesn't come in, my guides won't come in and say that to me. It's not until after I've had the experience that they're like, yeah, we just needed to use you to hold light because we are kind of just testing and evaluating where they're at. We couldn't quite tell. So we sent you in there to like bring about those things coming to the surface. And then we could see how they'd handled that. And now we can deliver the lessons accordingly. And then you're like, sit back afterwards after you had that uploaded into you and you're like, seriously? That's what that smozzle of a mess that just took place was all about, was you used me to hold the light so you could see their lessons and, evaluate accordingly for the next set of lessons that they need to go on to. Oh yeah. Okay, can you let me know the next time you're going to do that? Because it feels really bad when they're like having these reactions to things. And they're like, we probably won't. We probably won't what? We probably won't let you know because it defeats the whole purpose. And you're like, okay.
I mean, and
Right.
I mean, it is. It's so beautiful the way you say it. It's like there is, in my opinion, my journey, how I've experienced this. There is no right or wrong. Everyone, there. My the be all or end all, and how I sum everything up is when you dismiss someone's belief system, you dismiss your own. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it doesn't get any easier than that. And within this job, been in this space a couple of months now. It seems like an eternity, but it's only been like 6 months. I've been in this sort of like realm of social media, and
Yeah,
quite
good.
frankly, I got to be honest, and I'm just going to tell you this straight up. I've never met more egos in my life, and
Mm-hmm.
this is the space that it's like a really it's dense. It's
Mm-hmm.
severely dense, and people are flexing and and they keep you at arm's length if they're in a clique that's of that certain frequency, and then they don't
Mm-hmm.
want they come across someone like yourself or myself, and then they're like, oh no, we can't have that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be like exposed as a snake oil salesman or a charlatan or something of that nature. But there's it's just happening all the time. It's like I'm always of the camp. Show me. I'm going to show you. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
show you a healing. I'm going to show you a transmission. I'm going to show you a channeling. I'm going to show you because that is part of what I do to help raise your consciousness. Because then you go, that was that was real. That really was
Mm-hmm.
valid. That was a confirmation from me. I experienced that. And that's the whole point of it.